I play smarter. I invest with Morning Line. You build your stable. When they race, you earn. Buy, sell, trade, anytime. Morning Line. Own the game.
Hi, everyone. Mailloux, Scott Shapiro here doing a special Pick 5 preview for Future Stars Friday at Del Mar, 10-race program. Once we hit race number 6, Scott, it is Breeders' Cup races all the way for the 2-year-olds. It's a really great sequence. And just a couple of things to note before we dive into this Pick 5 preview. First off, if you're looking for your handicapping needs, you need to get the past performances. You want access to Clockers reports. We have you covered on DRF.com. There's a Breeders' Cup package, which will save you $38. So there's a QR code here to scan, or you can visit the website for more details. And good thing to get started early, Scott, because the fields are so big. There's a lot of quality. The caliber is top notch. And when we think about the Breeders' Cup, we think about payoffs, and just some interesting things to note here when we look at the average payoffs in the Breeders' Cup. When it comes to the Pick 5s, the payout on average, when you look at the Breeders' Cup races versus North American races, $67,393. It's 574% higher. And we talked about this moments ago. These are averages from 2020 to 2024. You're getting big field sizes, you're getting quality, you're getting prices, and you're also getting very big pools.
Yeah, it's good times for bettors is what it really comes down to. You know, these small fields in these races are usually 7, 8, 9. You get big fields. You've got a lot of horses that can get completely overlooked in the wagering and completely overlooked in these pools. And we're going to try to hopefully find a couple of those winners to include in our sequence as we talk about it.
Breeders' Cup action gets kicked off in race number 6. It's the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint, 5 furlongs. Important to point that out when we think about the turf sprints, because that can vary track to track, Scott. And big field here. A lot of 2-year-olds to look at. Obviously, you can see 17 in here, with 13 through 17 being also eligible. So I'll let you kick it off. I personally, though, thought this was one of the races you might need some coverage.
Yeah, generally speaking, I opt that way in these Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprints. There's a lot of unknowns, and trip more than anything almost always trumps even talent in these types of races. You've got to have talent. And the one thing that I found most important, or I think, and I've watched a lot of races at Del Mar in these 5 furlong sprints, even when the rails are in, I think the one thing you really want to avoid, and it's true of a lot of places, is being off the pace and wide early. You can win on the lead in these races if you don't duel into a defeat. But if you come from off the pace, kind of like last year, you want to be horses that are saving ground early and then angling out.
Yeah, and looking at this field, curious to get your thoughts on some of the horses. I think when looking at the morning line, there isn't necessarily a heavy favorite in here, but you start to gravitate towards maybe the likes of the 9 True Love, who has beaten her male rivals overseas, now comes over for Aidan O'Brien. I mean, she's done such little wrong that I was of the opinion you start with her and then you add from her.
That would make a lot of sense, I mean, I can understand. And if you are able to take a stand with her and feel confident, I think to your point, earlier, is you're going to get a lot of people spreading in this race. So maybe gaining leverage elsewhere or saving money, pressing up. I struggle to be overly confident with her. She's going to be to the outside. She's probably going to be coming from somewhat off the pace under Wade and Lorden, but it's hard to leave her off. She definitely makes a lot of sense.
Then some others in here to talk about. Another filly in here, Lenny Lou for Patrick Bianco, and she'll have post 12. She was 3rd behind True Love in the Queen Mary at Royal Ascot. I thought there were other intriguing horses, maybe at some, better prices. The one Brussels, another one for Aidan O'Brien, who I think has very good, performances, even at the Group 1 level 2 back. Who did you sort of focus in on here, mentioning that you probably need some coverage?
Yeah, I'm going to let Schwarzenegger and Lenny Lou, who you were just speaking about, beat me from the far outside. They're going to have a lot go right from out there to win, I think. And I picked Brussels. I mean, you will see later. I got opted to get a lot of coverage as well. But I like the inside trip. I think this horse has some tactical speed. He only has 1 win, but I just think he's going to get the coveted inside off the pace trip, off a lively pace here. I thought Brussels was worth including. Military Code kind of fits that profile as well. And maybe Intricate Spirit at a price. If there is a horse that's fast enough to get clear, which is going to be really tough, Intricate Spirit might be that horse, and he's going to be a pretty good price, I think.
We will move to race number 7, the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies, a mile and a 16th here. on the main track, a field of 9. And it's interesting. You'll watch a couple of horses exit the Alcibiades where obviously there was a disqualification. There was some contact. Percy's Bar ended up crossing the wire almost 3 lengths in front, gets disqualified and placed to second, which makes Tommy Joe the winner. And they've been sort of, battling it out in their last couple. I do think they're going to take a lot of respect, as well as the 7 Explorer here for Bob Baffert, who's 2 for 3 in her career.
Yeah, this is a race that I think is underwhelming in terms of star power compared to some of the other races and some recent efforts or recent editions of the juvenile fillies. But it might be my favorite race to bet on this of the 5 because I'm going to take on the favorites in here. I don't think there's a lot of separation between the top and the bottom in this field. I think a couple of the Tommy Joe, I have question marks, even though, like you mentioned, she got placed first via disqualification last out. Her damn mother was a little bit more of a sprinter, precocious early, and wondering if maybe we've seen the best of her or she'll want a little less ground than this. And I don't think the Bob Bafferts are killers in here either. Famous last words, but both Bottle of Rouge and Explorer to me seem vulnerable. Did you think any of them were kind of standouts, or I kind of going to play against those 3?
No, I didn't think necessarily standouts. I go too deep in here. I sort of had the same sentiments that you had about Tommy Joe. I think looking at the big 3, I probably prefer Percy's Bar the most. I think she has a lot of upside, even though I think some argue that her figures aren't the greatest. They're 2-year-olds. They're going to get better. You don't want to see the big figures first time out on a 2-year-old. At least I'm of that opinion, because I don't want to call about the bounce factor, but it happens where they strike early and they don't get better. I'd rather see an improving type. I think she's that. Like I said, I'm not necessarily enamored by Tommy Joe. I think you have to choose one of them specifically. And then obviously Explora, she's going to take the respect because it is Juan Hernandez here for Bob Baffert. She has 2 local performances. Obviously, Bottle of Rouge, talked about her, defeated her. But I think last time out, she sort of ran even better around 2 turns. I know it was at Santa Anita. So I didn't get necessarily creative here.
Well, I think Percy's Bar is the one to beat, and I'll probably be betting on her to win if she's 9-2 or higher. This filly has been good right away. Ben Colebrook does not have real good numbers at first out at all. And this filly she got a good setup in both of her first 2 starts, but for him not only to win at first asking, but then wheel her back at Churchill where he doesn't win a lot of races, mostly at Keeneland, and win that easy as well. She's not run a bad race yet, so she's the one that I'm hoping gets maybe overlooked, although the fact we both like her, I don't know. But I also think the 2 longer shot, 2 kind of horses that are fillies that are coming up, the 3 Meaning and the 8 Super Corridoro, they're going to be big prices, and there's no doubt this is a big step up. But the fact that I'm leery about how high, what tier of top fillies we're looking at this year, I think it's a little lesser than some years, means I think that they're, if they can take a step up against this group, that they can win at a big price. So I'm 3 deep.
And those 2 that you mentioned there, 15-1, one for Michael McCarthy, the other for John Sadler. We'll move to the middle leg of the sequence, race number 8. It is an interesting one. It's the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. I say it's interesting. It's a mile here, going the flat mile, and you look at the favorite all the way on the outside, Precise. She's 6-5. She's 4 for 5 in her career, but obviously with post 13, I don't think it necessarily helps her.
No, the draw was done no favors for her and another 2-year-old that we're going to talk about in the final leg, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And it's no joke at Del Mar. It's a pretty quick run into that first turn at the mile, much different than the 1.25 miles, which we'll be talking about. You guys will be talking about in the next video. But she's tough for me to leave off because I think she's a class above this field. But at the same point, that trip is a lot to overcome. So I kind of took the weak way out in here. I thought there were 2 other ones that are going to get better trips that have good chances to win, especially if Precise doesn't get the trip she wants or doesn't fire her best shot. One of them's Ultimate Love, who's just it's not easy to win turf races by open lengths. And she keeps doing it, 2-turn turf races by open lengths. She keeps doing it. Thought she finished real well last time in the Salima. She gets one of the hottest riders, if not the hottest rider in the world, in Johnny V. And then I think Imagination the Lady has done little wrong, and I think she's going to get a pretty good forward trip in here. I don't think there's a ton of early speed, actually. I don't think they're going to go slow, but I don't think they're going to come rolling out of there and really separate. So I thought she might be the one to get the jump on the late runners. How about you?
Yeah, we see this pretty similarly. I mean, I will use the 13th Precise. I think the one ultimate love, when I think of the Mid-Atlantic, I think of two trainers using it to their advantage, Graham Ocean and Michael Trombetta. Trombetta trains this one. I love the way that she's been able to win her 3 starts. And sure, she has to step up in class, but I thought she's looked good in both of her most recent wins at Laurel. And then my price in here, who's probably a wild card, I don't think will take respect, is the 5 Final Accord, who is going to have to stretch out from 5 furlongs to 6, now to a mile, but has been able to win those first 2 starts. I thought the debut, you always question what they faced, right? And it was a small field up at Woodbine, going 5/8 on the inner, but I think it sets her up good for this. Now, her buyers didn't take a step forward in her next outing, but she did tackle grade 3 competition in the matron. And I thought she ran very well. When you look at the pace dynamics, should have for Wesley Ward, did kind of the dirty work on the front end, but she was able to roll late. And I think in here, I see her being a little bit closer to the action on the stretch out. And I don't think she's going to necessarily have problems doing so. So I mentioned she'll be my big price in this third leg of the sequence.
You know the thrill of picking a winner. But instead of just running to the window for a quick payout, I play smarter. I invest with Morning Line. Morning Line is a more sophisticated way to use your skill and bankroll without putting it all at risk. Build your stable. When they race, you earn. Buy, sell, trade, anytime. Keep the action rolling without burning your bankroll. This is playing the ponies, elevated like a boss. Morning Line. Own the game.
We will move to the fourth leg. We get back on the dirt in the grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile, mile and a 16th. And I'm curious to get your analysis here, because I think most people are either in the camp of Ted Noffey or they're in the Brandt camp. And I was of the opinion that I couldn't use them necessarily both on a ticket, or at least on this ticket that we're going to show. What were your thoughts on the two, and could you separate them?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. First and foremost, I wouldn't want to use both of them. And I also, because of the way I played the last race, kind of a spoiler, I used Ted Noffey in a couple of prices in here. I thought that Ted Noffey was the clear one to beat, but maybe his, the bottom side of his pedigree could catch up with him, shipping cross country, not necessarily bred to go 2 turns. And I think Intrepido and Blackout Time might be bigger prices within the sequence for the reasons you mentioned. They might be 5-1 and 8-1 on the board, but I think a lot of people are going to try to go thin in this race, maybe singling Ted Noffey. And I didn't really want to take that approach, because I think both those inside 2 horses are a little bit better than maybe, and stack up a little bit better than maybe the public thinks. So I'm against Brandt in this spot. I just don't necessarily love the fact that he skipped the American Pharaoh. That's not the move Bob Baffert has made with success in this race recently. So we'll see. But what about you? What move did you make?
I made the move of using Ted Noffey and one other horse, which you mentioned Blackout Time being one of the ones in Trepido. I was torn between them, because I do think Kenny McPeak's Colton here is only going to get better. I think he has a lot of potential, but I did like Intrepido in the last 2. I think has really blossomed, especially the race that you talked about, Bob skipping with Brandt, that being the American Pharaoh. I think the way that this horse was able to sit mid-pack, and sure, it wasn't a huge field, but make that one run to win by 3/4. He didn't have necessarily a perfect trip. I think at 8-1, if he's anywhere near there, he's a horse that I'm going to use not only in my pick 5, but I'll use in the exotic. So I'm very curious to see how the betting board will sort itself out as well, Scott, because right now, Brandt's 5-2 on the morning line. Ted Noffey is 4-5. I don't know how close or far away they could be come post time.
Yeah, the Baffert money out west. Obviously, there's other things that have come into account later in the pools these days to kind of outweigh that. But I thought that too. I thought maybe Ted Noffey, David, obviously our colleague, does an excellent job. I thought maybe it was going to be more 6-5, 9-5, or 6-5, 2-1. But we shall see. The one thing I know is if we can get Intrepido home, that's going to, we're live going into the 10th. We're going to be happy. We're going to be excited.
And speaking of the 10th, it's the grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. It is a nice field in here. And similarly, it's an over filled field with 15-14 making the main body here for this mile event. And you already hinted at it. You're going to skinny up here. And how are you going to do that?
Well, I think most people, if not all, that will go skinny will. And I think it's Stod, the 14. I think you don't say the G, but I they pronounced it differently at different racetracks. So I wish I had the answer. My friend Travis Stone did not help me out like he normally does. He didn't even know. So anyway, he's drawn to the far outside, and I'm worried about him out there a little bit more than I am Precise. And I think the next best horse, and I love the way he finished, and I think you might have been there, I'm not sure, but that the summer when Argos won on September 13th at Woodbine, he got a real good setup that day, and they, took advantage. But those top two ran well, and he outfinished a real horse in Wild Desert to the wire there. I thought he finished well. I think he's been freshened up, perfectly for this spot. And I think he's going to give the favorite a big run if the favorite has it, gets a good enough trip. And I like that I have Pratt on a much more inside post. What say you?
Yeah, you're going to carry a lot of weight here. I used the 14 on the ticket, but Argos is my top pick. I was very high on him in the summer. He made me money that day. I'll go back and hopefully fill up my wallet once again. But I think there's something to be said about his soaring free performance versus the summer. Obviously, a lot of the horses use the soaring free as a stepping stone to the summer, but the soaring free was run on the EP Taylor. It has the wide sweeping turns. It is not a mile. It is a mile and a half. It's very European style. And he did get floated wide at one point in that race, where when you go to the summer, it was run on the inner turf course, which is very tight turns, probably tighter in some ways than I would say Del Mar. Very different. And he handled it so well that I think for him, not only did he handle the stretch out, but he handled a different configuration. I really liked the way that he blossomed last time out. So I will be all team Riley Mott here. But there's another horse I will use who's a maiden. I'm going to use the one Here's Johnny. And I know he hasn't been able to beat some of his horses in here. You see Final Score has been a thorn in his side 2 and 3 races back. But last time out, I thought he had some problems. He had some excuses and he comes up ahead short. To me, it was his best race coming into this. I know he has to cut back slightly, but at least here I know he draws the inside. Hopefully he's just able to save ground. I think that is key with him. I hope he doesn't have to, angle out or lose ground. I think saving ground helps his chances. He gets Javier Castellano, who's been aboard for the last 2. He's going to be a big price in here. I think he could be north of 15-1. We will find out. But like your thoughts here on the number 9 Argos. Before we get to tickets, all of our Breeders' Cup content this week on the Daily Racing Form YouTube page, social, you name it, is presented by Morning Line. And Morning Line's an old school ownership that locks you in with fees, markups, and no exit. Morning Line offers a modern alternative, licensed access to elite racehorses with flexibility to buy, sell, or trade anytime. No ongoing costs, only on morningline.io. So if you're trying to get more information, definitely visit morningline.io. We appreciate their sponsorship of these videos this week. And hopefully this weekend, Friday and Saturday, Scott, will cash some tickets, and we'll start with your ticket here first in the pick 5. And you mentioned the single, but you kind of start top heavy with that first race being the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint.
Yeah, and I'm really worried we're too right, because Here's Johnny's my pick for second, and I only didn't use both because I wanted to get more coverage in race 6. So there's a lot of same page stuff going on here. But yeah, as you can see, I took the stand in a race where, people might take a stand, but it's not going to be with the horse that we like most in there in Argos, at least in my opinion. So it allows me to use Precise as well as the Pletcher, I'm forgetting his name, Ted Nafi, but also other horses, and feel okay with it. If I was singling a favorite, I would feel a little bit more gross about losing kind of some value there within my ticket. But I'm singling Argos. I've got some coverage early, and kind of looking forward to seeing what you got, because you got my boy Here's Johnny in here, who I've bet a couple times, so I know all about him.
So an $81 ticket for Scott. My ticket, $72. It's not as heavy. I do go deepest in the same leg as you, the first leg. Wanted coverage, still scared that that's not enough. But you can see for us to both hit this, we need Percy's Bar in the juvenile fillies in race number 7. She's the 4. I agree. I really am most intrigued by her. We're on the same page there. And you can see use some coverage in the 8th and the 10th and the stance. And I guess in the 9th in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile is Intrepido and Ted Nafi. I won't be using Brandt on this ticket. So 50-cent minimum, lots of different wagering opportunities. Maybe you don't have the budget for the pick 5, or you don't like the pick 5 sequence. There's a lot of great pick 4s. You can get involved in the pick 3s, you name it. And I think the key is what we'll do, Scott, is you mentioned you like Here's Johnny. So we know that you'll be getting involved in the exotics. We showed sort of those average payouts for Breeders' Cup versus North America. you can hit some major tries on Friday and Saturday and feel just as good about maybe hitting a pick 4 or pick 5 at another track on a weekday.
Without question. Or don't worry about playing pick 3. I'm going to support the pick 5 ticket that we showed with some more pressed up pick 4s. That's how I like to play those more. If I'm really right, I can hit the pick 4 maybe multiple times and still hit the pick 5, but get more coverage in the bigger wager.
Let us know who you like in the comments. Do you like Ted Noffey? Do you like Brandt? Do you like neither of them? Are you going to go in a different direction? Is it Tommy Joe? Is it Percy's Bar? We'll look forward to your feedback and wish you all the best this Friday and Saturday at Del Mar.